Yeah, so our next panel is on job creation, where the speakers will aim to address the demand and availability of jobs in an aging and wealthier Asia. To moderate this conversation, we have Taha Muhammad Abdul Karim. Taha is a business leader, management consultant, motivational speaker, and trainer. He is the group general manager and advisor to the board of directors at the Mascar Group and a consultant at Waltham Holding in Doha, Qatar. Our speakers on this panel are Honorable Chaturanga Abe Singha, Avinav Nigam, is it? Ayush. Ayush Nigam, Samdatta Singh, and Robert Colson. Honorable Chaturanga Abe Singha is the Deputy Minister of Industry and Entrepreneurship Development and a Member of Parliament for the Colombo District. After over 15 years in the corporate sector, he transitioned into politics under the NPP banner, and he has expertise in evidence-based policymaking for national economic strategy and emphasizes a systematic, data-driven approach to solving Sri Lanka's economic challenges. Ayush Nigam is a founder of Turn, an AI-powered platform solving global talent mobility at scale and operating at the intersection of tech, policy, and impact. Samdatta Singh is a first-gen serial entrepreneur, angel investor, and best-selling author, educated at MIT and a student of Harvard Business School. She's the founder and CEO of Acidus Global, a leading e-commerce middleware platform recognized by FT, Deloitte, and Forbes, aiming to be a billion-dollar PAT-positive company that she plans to IPO globally. Robert Colson is the executive advisor for real estate at Accenture in the UAE. He specializes in corporate investment strategy, M&A advisory, and portfolio optimization. Robert is a champion of digital transformation, integrating technologies like agentic AI, blockchain, and immersive experiences into sustainable solutions. So, from India to the UAE, our panelists will dissect the booming sectors reshaping Asia, highlighting where the next generation of high impact jobs will emerge. Over to you.
Thank you, and welcome to our panelists. So, this region is in a rare moment. Demand for services is compounding. As populations age and wealth expands in the region, the question isn't if jobs will be created, it's where and how fast, and whether we can keep access and affordability front and center. So today, we'll translate that demand into action. We'll look at the sectors that are already hiring: healthcare, hospitality, and broader services, and how innovation can turn tourism and other growth engines into durable, formal jobs across the region. By the end, I want to ask one policy question, one private sector commitment from each panelist, things we can track, and we'll get practical. Talent pipelines, credentials, mobility, financing models for hiring and for training. So with that, let's dive into three main subtopics: demand, innovation, and accessibility. I'll start with Ayush. Your platform spans 13 countries plus. Where is the tightest demand-supply gap for healthcare roles? And what credential or language barriers, if removed, would unlock those placements?
Thank you, Robert. So firstly, it's a pleasure to be here. So coming to the tightest healthcare requirement gap, right? So when we see the aging populations globally, it is very, very clear that the highest requirements that we are seeing globally, especially in countries like, say, Japan, Germany, and many others, especially where there's a language barrier, which is also making it tougher for these countries to recruit international workers. So the old age care sector is the most required sector for sure in terms of the requirements for jobs. The second one, also, like if we talk about healthcare in general, you have a lot of requirement for nurses as well. And clearly right now what we are seeing is there's a huge challenge in terms of these language learning abilities. So if you ask me in terms of the skilling and the other challenges that people face in kind of going over these borders, it is clearly the language learning as the biggest bottleneck. If we can solve that, we can really solve a lot.
So language continues to be one of the gaps as you look at mobility.
Definitely, definitely.
Chaturanga, I have a question for you. Given your public finance and science tech committee work, what one regulatory or procurement change might double, let's say, service sector hiring over the next year or so?
Yeah, so in terms of Sri Lanka and certain other countries also have the biggest barrier is on the labor laws. I think some of the laws that we exist in here is 1941 and 1943, which the policies were made mainly looking at manufacturing and thinking that the labor is getting exploited. So the policies around supporting part-time work and flexible work is the biggest bottleneck now we have at this point. I'm not exactly sure about the region, but we do have that problem. So I think if we really can make those subtle changes to enable the flexible work and part-time work, especially the service sector, will benefit immensely. And obviously, it'll one side it can double the employment or basically may increase the recruitment. The other way is that it will give recognition and formality to a lot of informal work that is happening today. So I think that is the biggest bottleneck that we need to unleash if it's within this year, if that has to happen. I think it's been recognized, but there are challenges of doing it, a lot of resistance. I hope globally that there is more recognition and value for flexible and part-time work, and that can probably thrive this sector and bring more employment, not only from the ages of 18 to 55, but even the workforce that we have beyond retirement age can engage in a more dignified way in these sectors.
Thank you. To you, post-World Cup, we continue to see robust infrastructure and construction activities in Qatar. What service subsectors are now the most dense in terms of jobs? And how are employers moving from World Cup quantity to post-World Cup quality?
Thanks, Robert. Before answering the question, I wear a few hats, and when it was introduced, it was mentioned about the jobs which I do. But I think for this panel, the role which I do, other than that, which is I work as the president of Indian Business and Professional Council. We are the largest expat community operating in Qatar, and also as an advisor to the royal family. So from those two angles, I'll try to address this question rather than from my other day jobs. So I would like to start with this. It's not the strongest or the most intelligent species that survive. It's the one who is most responsive to change. This applies in a job market also. So post-World Cup, what is happening in Qatar is different from what used to happen before World Cup or when Qatar won the World Cup bid. So that was a time when there was a lot of infrastructure projects were happening. The country was, looking for developing the infrastructure, wherein large numbers were needed. So that time, all the people were, talking about large, unskilled or semi-skilled workers who were used to be trained and then used for infrastructure development. Now we are in a situation post-World Cup where the infrastructure is ready, at least for next 10 years. And that's when the shift changes from quantity to quality, and from project phase to implementation phase, operation phase, facility management phase. So the areas where currently, other than, of course, oil and gas, there is a lot of development happening. Qatar being one of the largest players in the gas market. But in other fields, if you see, one is facility management services and technical services, because all these infrastructure which is built, that need to be serviced regularly. So from a maker or a labor point of view, it will move to a service point of view or a facility management point of view. That's one change. Second is, we need to, for any country when we are talking about, we need to understand what that country's vision is and what strategy they are putting in place. So to understand more about Qatar, we need to understand Qatar National Vision 2030, which started in around 2008, 22 years. So which was, the execution plan was further developed with the Qatar National Development Strategy, which is, so the third development strategy which came in place last year, post-World Cup. So that talks about the different clusters which are important or which are mobilizing the country's growth. So anybody who is thinking about sending people for a country like India, for a country like Sri Lanka, or any of these countries in the subcontinent which are sending large number of workers, they need to understand what the Qatar National Development Strategies. They need to understand what the sectors are, the growth clusters are. For example, there are 3 growth clusters which is identified by Qatar. One is tourism, which is not just any tourism, it is the luxury tourism and MICE, as well as family tourism. So those service people who could cater to that level, either we need to train the people to that level, or the people who are fit for that level will reach there. So that is about tourism. Then another area which Qatar is developing is the logistics, wherein Qatar wants to be they have been building the infrastructure to be a logistic hub. So which all, where people could be served for that sector. And third is manufacturing, which is not about the large scale manufacturing. It is about chemicals and low carbon metals. So these are the areas where Qatar is focusing in a growth cluster point of view. So we need to understand what the country wants, and we need to quickly adapt to that. So that's why I said it's the species which will be more responsive to change, which are ready to adapt to the new requirement, which are ready to upgrade their skills, they will be surviving. So from quantity, it will move to quality. So that's what I want to convey.
Thank you. Samdula, cross-border e-commerce creates middle-skill jobs in logistics, customer experience, and analytics. What roles absorb the talent quickest what you've seen in this region? And what are the credentials that matter most in your hiring?
Thank you so much, Robert, for the question. And picking up from what Taha said, right? I think evolution is the only constant, right? Today, we're talking about Asia, but today's skills or micro-skilling is not region-specific. It's opportunity-specific. So what cross-border in the business that we are in, and I'm going to go a little beyond that. So what we do is we enable brands to scale beyond one region to identify suitable customers as consumers, so there is economics of scale. So if you see from a developing world perspective, one thing that has changed is that your consumers are not just country specific. It's everywhere. If you can find them at the right time, and if you're able to cater to them at the right cost, then you have them for life. But the consumer is also very fickle. Therefore, unless you're giving them a great customer experience, high quality products, and very strong fulfillment and logistics capabilities, they quickly shift because they are very intuitive to time. So logistics, supply chain, distribution, and cross-border enablement is going to be the future. Because at the end of the day, no matter how much of technology development you're doing, the application of the technology is still to ease your life. So if you see from an industrial revolution perspective, Robert, every time human has invented a new machine or a new technique is to find more time for creative intelligence. So today, the world is no longer looking at the old school job creation tactics. They're now looking at micro-skilling so that the people are more self-sustainable, right? People are becoming self-creators and not job creators alone. So entrepreneurship is no longer about just employment. Today, the number of brands that are getting created. Each individual is sitting at home and finding a quality of theirs and creating a brand. A content creator can now go online and create content and make money off that content. So cross-border, when you see from a content perspective also, consumption has gone up. So I think our mindset as job enablement thinking process has to go away, and we should think about facilitating that using modern technology, can I create more self-sustainable individuals? So if your kids tomorrow can do something of their own and make way more money or the same money or lead a self-sustainable life, people are happy with that. Also, the other dynamic change that has happened in cross-border and with the advent of technology is that communities, collaboration, and creativity has gotten closer to individual. So today, an artist that wouldn't get the value for their art in a region is able to go online put the art up and is becoming the most affluent money-making artist, which was not possible before. An artist, if you see, would get the value for their art when they get close to 60, 65, because people would think, okay, now he can't make any more, therefore it's rare, therefore I'm going to pay for it. So while we look at aging, innovation, collaboration, I would say today the barriers of the ability to go beyond one region has substantially changed. Today, if you want opportunity and if you're looking to diversify, the modern methods are available. So I think we should change our mindset from just being job creators, but enablers of a new economy so that everybody with a creative intelligence can superpower the artificial intelligence and find a way of life. I think that's the way if we think we're going to be able to create a sustainable economy.
Thank you. I mean, it seems a key takeaway from the discussion on demand is not that there is demand, but understanding exactly what demand is out there, what skills are needed to meet that demand.
Absolutely, Robert.
Thank you. So let's move on to the next subtopic, innovation. Let me start here, Chaturanga, with you. With your digital transformation background, what national data assets should be opened up in a, let's say, privacy-safe way to let startups start building these job engines at the small and medium enterprise level?
Yeah, actually, I think I'll pick from what she mentioned about going forward. It's not about jobs. I think this entire word about jobs has to take away with. It's about purpose driven, what we really want to do, and whether it creates value at organization or whether it surfaces my purpose within that organization or myself creating something else. So I think the question that you posed is what we really need, because without data, the possibilities getting extremely limited. So the democratization of information is what's going to enable the economy that we are talking about, because then the opportunities become very obvious and it's easy for people to decide whether I'm going to join a large corporate or whether I'm going to create something new through my innovation. So basically, if you really look at the data sets, I think the ability of any government to share data about trade, share data about enterprises, share data about skills and capabilities. Now, for example, I'll give you a very simple example. If you can make open with all the HS codes, what is getting imported and what is getting exported, that's good enough for somebody to find out a lot of gaps. And if now, for the first time in the history, the Ministry of Industries in Sri Lanka is gathering the entire data set of industries from small scale to large scale. That database itself will create enormous opportunity for people to figure out supply chain partners and raw material suppliers to customers to and also to see the insights, how things are growing. So I think one database is about the export inputs, and then the other database about the industry, if the government can make it available. And the other piece is the skill. So even we talk of skill as individual capability, there is formalization of skill, like how many graduates, how many vocational training, how many, because even for the industry to fetch this information is quite tough. So the three databases I would say is the database on type of industries and where they are and what they do, what the type of exports and imports the country is doing with the globe. The third is the skill base where people either can voluntarily register themselves or through the national integration of education providers, if we can give that access to people, they will come up with various innovations and products which they couldn't have done without that data sets. So I think that's very important to make it public as soon as possible.
Unleashing the potential.
Yeah, unleashing the potential, because insights is what we really want to create businesses and drive change. I don't think even the industries at this moment know where their supply of labor skill is coming from and what is their future need that's going to be. So I think opening these things up to that level of insight is going to make a huge impact in the society.
Thank you. Staying on this topic, Ayush, could you give us some specific use cases of AI and tech for improving the candidate process? And how can AI be leveraged for improving the learning outcomes that you spoke about earlier?
Perfect, perfect. So first of all, what we are doing at Turn Group is to create a hyper efficient, transparent and ethical system for migration of skilled workers, right? So globally. Now, what we are seeing today is that there are far too many intermediaries in between who are messing up the system. There's lack of transparency, and as Chitranga very rightly mentioned it, there is so much need of clarity for everyone and the right sort of connection and matching for the right people to find the right dream jobs, right? I think that is somehow very, very much lacking. So now in terms of the whole process, right, like the AI driven process, how we are able to kind of add value are like 5 main points. So number one, as I said, like language learning or skill building in general is one of the largest barriers for talents to find international opportunities, right? So skill building requires a lot of scale right now, especially if we talk about language learning, because there are very few language trainers out there who are good enough. Plus, what happens is like you can't scale those typical models just without technology. So what we can do is just imagine this. So I was trying to learn German, I was trying to learn Japanese, even in IIT, right? So I did this course in German. And right after passing out, how much German can I speak? Zero, right? I absolutely forgot everything. And why did that happen? Because I was not exactly practicing German at all, right? Like, what was the point of learning something when you forget it in 6 months? So the one most important thing is a practice bot that we have developed. Very simple, right? Like you can practice speaking to it. Now imagine the second thing. Every learner has a very different learning profile, right? So we can't give like a batch of 50 students the same assignments, the same homework, and then who checks it and how do they check it, etc., right? So that's where it becomes very customized. Now all these are very simple intuitive solutions, but they were just not happening, right? So then based on every individual learner's profiles, you get challenges, you get assessments, etc., and then it keeps tweaking based on your learning aptitude. So these things are able to increase the number of people we can train and reduce the time required to train people more effectively. So we are able to reduce the time frame close to by 30 to 40% and increase the student to teacher ratio by 2 to 3 times. Now, this is really helping. We still need teachers, we still need classrooms, all that is still required, right? I'm not saying we're ruling them out. The second piece, very important also, is like the simulations, right? When you're actually moving to another country, you need to understand the context of that. So we are building a lot of simulations, but I'll move on from that quickly. The other aspect, very important, as Chitranga was also mentioning, the aspect of matching and the right kind of assessments. How do you make all of that happen? The right people meeting the right jobs, and that's where we have this sort of a AI interviewer, AI matching sort of tools. So it automatically, you can see the whole database, but you can also automatically, based on your preferences, get matched to the perfect people. Now imagine this: an HR person on Friday speaks to our bot, tells them like what they need. It automatically creates a job description based on the kind of job descriptions that they typically create. And then it creates a automatic interview, what the candidates will be going through. Now, this interview is made live. All the people who are relevant to this job get a notification that this is a nice job for you. Do you want to take this interview? Now, on Saturday or Sunday, that the candidate gives a 15-minute interview with the AI bot. On Monday, the HR comes back and finds like the number one, number two, number three candidates based on all the aspects. And they can also see the interview video as well. If they want, they can take another interview in person as well. But if they want to skip that, just press offer. And so those are things that can really speed up the process. I would love to talk about the post-offer process, but I know it's we're running short on time.
No, I think that's an amazing innovation in terms of being able to rapidly assess, right, and get through candidate screening, right, in a very rapid manner, right? So you're able to unlock a pipeline that otherwise you may not have been able to address.
Exactly.
If the panelists don't mind, we covered innovation, we covered demand. I'd like to move forward in the agenda to accessibility and inclusion, make sure we are able to cover that topic. I'll start with you. In terms of accessibility, what is your most effective on-ramp, specifically for women or youth, into the e-commerce opportunities? Whether that's boot camps, stipend internships, or maybe a remote approach to hiring?
I think that's a great question you ask, and I think it's very important to understand what we mean by inclusivity today. To me, inclusivity is beyond gender. It's more about learning and the ability to adopt, right? I'll share some facts with you, Robert, which will blow your mind. So we have warehouses across the world. And typically what we do is when we invert goods into a region, let's say we work with the likes of Unilever, Reckitt Benckiser, Johnson & Johnson, Colgate-Palmolive. So when you are buying their products on an e-commerce channel, we are the ones that are enabling the back end. A lot of the warehouse staff, which are the blue-collar workers, are actually women. You would think they're men, right? Because that is typically what your mindset is, that, hey, you know what? A man is generally strong. They would pick, pack, handle, and ship the order. But let's reverse the dynamics. The categories are very different, right? You have health, personal care, consumables, electronics, heavy electronics, home and kitchen, plus, plus, plus. When you order a health supplement, the size of the box is really small, and it doesn't require that kind of a human intensity to go pick it up from the rack, scan it, and then pack it. Now, why do we employ women there? Because of agility. And you'll be surprised that their agility and tenacity on micro details are much higher than men. And there's nothing wrong about it. There's a reason the best chefs of the world are men and the best economists and bankers of the world are women. Yeah, it's fact. I always say this, my husband is an amazing cook besides being a great lawyer. Men are great in kitchen, they're intuitive. Women are great with money. And they're great when it comes to attention to details, because that's what you have to do. You have to wear so many hats at home, as a mother, as a daughter, as a wife, as much, much more, that you generally have more attention to details. Because you have attention towards your kids, you generally are more intuitive. That's also the power of the 2 X chromosomes. So if you shift the dynamics, you get this, and then you have 3 rotational labor times. So they have more agility in how many times they can serve. So if they have kids at home, they can pick a shift that is much conducive to them. That way you're reducing the number of hours and intensity and bringing out better productivity. Now, when it comes to analytical skills, who before 2 decades knew e-commerce or was talking about AI? But the main intuitiveness of human race has always been the agility to learn. Every time a new innovation has come, education has gotten disrupted. Today, the challenge is our education systems are not as disruptive as the employment, entrepreneurship, and the learning system required to attain the scale that we are looking at. And that's why micro-learning becomes very important. And it's not an HR job. It is a category and a segment job. Today, the Unilever that was 110 years back is not the same Unilever today, or the Procter & Gamble. What have they done? They're no longer just spending money on R&D to acquire or rather build brands. They're now only focusing on acquisition, which means there is more opportunity for new brands to bring innovation done by individuals and having an opportunity to exit to larger enterprises. So it's the whole ability has changed. So why analytics is so important? You don't just launch a brand and wait for the consumer to buy it. It's about reverse engineering. You look at what the consumer is searching for and build a brand on the gaps which are there in the market. And I'll give you an example. You go online to Amazon today, one of the highest search keywords is 9.5 pH water. Beat that. Do you know why? Because today the buzzword is longevity and wellness. For your gut to be healthy, you need certain level of alkalinity, and most of the waters that come in plastic bottles have less than 7 pH. So it's not good for the gut. So with more awareness on digital and social media, people's nuances on searches, what they're looking for has significantly changed. So what is the opportunity here? If you can train someone to understand how to test water at home, they can start doing micro bottling and start supplying. Because all it needs on Amazon or Walmart today for you to open an account is just a company registration. So see, sometimes simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And we don't have to complicate learning. We can make it a little more simple, bring more agility and micro learning. And our inclusiveness should be beyond the regular norms of thinking of saying that if I do this, I should only continue to do this. I go to my warehouse, sit with my staff, and have learned how to do pick pack. Because I can't be the CEO of a company if I just sit at my office and tell them what to do. So to learn to do it with your team is what is going to foster learning for long-term basis, because they look at you as a leader and not a manager. I think that is what inclusiveness should look like, where you don't dictate creativity or jobs, you participate and do it together so they learn with you and you learn with them.
Thank you. So I want to save some time to make sure we get questions from the crowd. So I just have one more question. How would you structure, let's say, outcome-based subsidies, and this is market-facing, to expand access to essential services while incentivizing providers to hire and train locally? And the heart of the question really is, as you train and as you improve service access, costs tend to go up. So what do you see from a policy perspective or a program perspective to help increase access to services while still being able to maintain accessibility to the job market?
So I think the real issue that we are facing now, if you really look at, I think taking from this inclusion, actually the inclusion is that where did we lose accessibility and how did we start excluding? So in terms of the programs that we have, in terms of taking care of the society and giving more access, we are just still looking at from a perspective of providing, not basically looking at what's been really required. So the technological transformation that's going to take place is the number one access driver. And again, to see that how do we bring knowledge and insights into every citizen, and getting that citizens on board is going to drive a lot of demand from the citizens itself. So currently what the structures look like is we basically think this is what people want and we try to provide it. But reversing it is that giving people access to services through digital technology and more dialogue and communication. And then what we can really recraft the subsidy programs that we have directly linked to people, but we don't know what they use their subsidy for. And that is, there's no two-way understanding of where the subsidy is making an impact. There's so many subsidies given for poverty, but we don't see any elevation of the problem. And if you really look at the skilling side, the real gap now is that the children or the youth does not know what's available out there. And as correctly said, it's not from a formal education system that's going to change. So it's going to be mostly informal, where when you know what you need to learn, I generally say it's learn to learn. So when anybody figured out how to learn, humans are quite capable of doing it. It's just that we have framed the historical pattern of education to still force it with incremental changes. This drastic change that what we now need is to open up. The education will provide a formal basis, but access to information and access to opportunity is going to break this barrier of exclusion. And especially in Sri Lanka, our female labor force participation is low as 31%. And the reason we generally talk about social barriers, structural barriers, but no, it's the real is that whether we have really given them access to things, access to information, access to capital, access to collaborate. I think the whole the benefit packages and subsidies the government is giving at this point will still go a waste if we don't invest in changing the reforms on how do we include people into the new economy. The old economy is over. So where you need to go to a factory and work and, earn to travel to Colombo and find a job, I think that piece is over. So more you redistribute the economic activities to the areas that is needed, things will change. And so this combination of taking care of people for a while, whilst making a transformational change in how enabling the economy to each of those citizens is going to make that change. We believe in that as a new government.
Robert, can I just add one small point to that?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So on the government's sort of decision-making, data points that you're talking about, I think very, very good points there. So we're working with the UK and the UAE governments to give them complete transparency, visibility in terms of the quality of candidates that are, so all these people that are flowing into these countries. I think we need to do this from both sides, right? So they are doing it more from a demands perspective. We need to have clear visibility of the kind of people, the quality of people that are flowing into the country. Is there a match or mismatch? And then we can take better decisions. But similarly, I think it's very critical, like you're talking about, how do we build that sort of data visibility from the supply side countries as well? The way we are doing the skilling, the way kind of the people that are flowing out from the countries. So we are definitely working on that and would love to kind of look at how we can make these systems grow, right?
No, but I would like to add some point. Again, it is coincidentally, it happened that just before I came for this summit, I had the pleasure of meeting the Union Minister of Labor and Employment from India in Qatar. So he had visited Qatar on the sidelines of UN Sustainability Development Conference. So we had a meeting wherein he had shared one best practice which was appreciated well in the ILO meeting in Geneva, which he presented, which makes India a superpower in terms of, so which may be used for Sri Lanka or for any of those countries which are. So we have created a platform called National Career Services Portal, wherein the employees, because at the end of the day, the demands keep changing. The requirement in each countries keep changing. So it's important to have an international labor mobility ecosystem. So we have created something called a National Career Service Portal, wherein as of last week, when we had the discussion, it was 21 million employees who have registered to that portal. So what happens in countries like ours is there are a lot of intermediaries who play in, and sometimes there is recruitment frauds which are there. Sometimes there is a mismatch. Somebody pays a big amount, and at the end of the day, he reaches a country and he understands that the job is totally different. To avoid all this, we have created something called an NCS, National Career Service Portal. So what this helps is, it brings transparency, and along with that, as an extension, they have created something called E2E launches, which is education to employment launches. So depending on each country specific, the employers could contact the labor ministry and say, this is the requirement which we need. And these launches will give these quick short courses which Som was mentioning, these stackable, the short 2 weeks, 1 month programs, which will enable the people to quickly adapt to the requirement which is needed for that country. So this is something which could, so because at the end of the day, on one side we say that, there is acute shortage of jobs or high unemployment. On the other side, we always say that we miss the right talents. So this is always there. So to meet that sweet spot, the practices like this would help. And once we have an integrated system, especially on one side, we talk about technology taking away jobs. But if we use the technology in the right way, we could use it in such a way that the labor mobility ecosystem could be used properly. And when the borders become bridges, the speed becomes the currency of opportunity. So that's something which we need to keep it in mind. Thank you.
So one key takeaway when we talk about demand, we talk about innovation, we talk about accessibility, is that you might view employees or potential employees as market participants, right? And you have businesses that are able to expose their requirements. You have visibility into the data from both the government demand perspective as well as the labor pool itself, and the market participants will be able to align themselves, find the right skills, micro skill. And I think that's an important takeaway here. So I want to turn it over to the crowd, see if we have any questions out there. So again, looking at the demand for job creation in the region, looking at innovations. Any questions for our panelists? It's a quiet crowd.
Let me ask one question. How you see salaries and wages increasing? Because there's these gaps you're talking, but large number of influencers are essentially living off of their mom and dad. So there's a lot of challenges in, even though the job formation is creating, the current economic system that you even to have live here, say in Sri Lanka, there's some economic wage salary that you need. And if the jobs that you're creating are not really capping into that, I don't see a conversation around wages and salaries, even though we are talking largely about possible jobs. I'd love to touch upon how you see that being addressed.
I'm sure his, honorable can talk about Sri Lanka, but there's something that I'd written an article about a few years back, is that what really works when it comes to the US economy and when you call it a developed economy is not just the trading stocks, but the minimum wage format. That scalability and scalability with appropriation of the value of time today is missing in most of Asia, right? Because the identification of a labor is to look at that, can I make them do something I don't want to do, versus can they enable me to be more efficient and better at what I do? So I think that's a huge demarcation between the nations in Asia versus US. Minimum wage, it's still not a concept. We decide what we want to pay, from our house help to our driver to the workforce in our warehouses to somebody who's working in finance. There is no standardization. And that's something that we have adopted at Asidus, is that we have created standardization, and we have created standardization based on skills and experience and not just pedigree. We don't hire people, even though I'm sure Ayush and I went to good schools, we were lucky, but we don't hire people anymore based on the school that they went to. We hire people based their ability to demonstrate value, their cultural adaptability, because that's very important to drive loyalty and long-term value. And we've created benchmarks. So even if we got a resume where someone who's getting like 5 lakhs a year, but we know that they ideally should get 8 and more, we do that. Also, as companies, as an entrepreneur, I feel that if you cannot have your employees work with you and not work for you, thereby incentivizing them with shares, equity, value, so they feel they're building the company alongside you, there's going to be a lot of retention challenges. So I think that's my summary. I know we're running short of time, but Kandi, oh yes, sir.
This may be an illegitimate question to this panel, because you've been talking about the kind of jobs very rightly, and it's been a fascinating discussion. But I was thinking, for India, the issue really is that 45% of our population is still on the farm. Mm-hmm. And the farm needs only 1/3 of those people. Mm-hmm. And the standard route, historically, over the last 200 years, was the factory route, to go from agriculture to industry. In India, we've seemed to have skipped from the farm to the digital age. And so we were discussing over breakfast how AI, with robotics, etc., is going to make it even more difficult for such people to get jobs. Is there any hope, since you all talked about jobs, is there any hope for the masses? I'm talking about the millions of people who are stuck in those jobs, because we haven't really created an industrial revolution yet in India. And this is 30 years after the 1991 reforms. Any thoughts?
So it's a brilliant question you ask, and I have to rush for something, but I want to answer that. In the next 10 years, this decade is going to be about agriculture. This decade is going to be about going back to basics. This decade is going to be about wellness. This decade is going to be about going back to roots. The human race over the years of evolution has always gone back to roots, because at the end of the day, this farming ecosystem, the agriculture ecosystem, is the very backbone of any country. Today, the reason we have become more inward looking, whether it's the tariffs, etc., is because we know what we are capable of. With robotics and deep engineering and deep tech, a farmland will no longer be restricted to just producing potatoes or rice or tomato. They're going to do multi-level agriculture, thereby empowering the farmers to actually decide the cost of the produce. There is a lot bigger revolution coming when it comes to the organic produce, because we know that at the end of the day, no matter how much money we make, if we are not healthy, we are not wealthy. So I am giving you this in like writing, that the next 10 years is going to be about the agriculture and the farming revolution. And India is going to be at the forefront of it, because we are going back to our roots. We were one of the most sustainable, strong economic countries 10,000 years back. We're coming back to that. And why? Because we understand that being uprooted is not sustainable. Being rooted is. So with engineering, with innovation, that is drastically going to empower the farmers and that community. So you see the number of brands that have come out in organic, even milking, right? The cows in the farmland who are used for the purpose of farming today are being leveraged ethically for better produce. So I think there's going to be a big revolution, and hopefully you and I got to get a time to chat about it as well, and I'll share with you my thoughts and data on it. Thank you for the question.
So just to add to that, so I definitely agree with you, sir, that we need much lesser people on the farm, right? We need probably 1/3 of it. I was in agriculture, spent 12 years trying to do that as well. So definitely agree with you. Now, in terms of the upskilling of these people and how we can get them better jobs, I would just take two quick points. So number one, just like Urban Company or Urban Clap in India was able to very successfully upskill them, bring them to cities, make them the best quality workers out there, and actually really create a huge amount of jobs for them. I think that was a great example. But similarly, we need global mobility now. Just like Modi ji is now pushing this thing like India becoming the skill capital of the world. Now, how do we go deep? I think that is the big question. So that's where I think we are using technology with governments. I think that's super essential here. So like, for example, we work with the NSDC, the National Skills Development Corporation, the state governments to go deeper. How do we use technology to make that upskilling happen at the ground level with those local colleges, with those universities, with the governments at the ground level? That is something that we are trying to democratize. And I think that is something very essential. So just like you rightly mentioned, we need technology for this upskilling and the connection to the right opportunities. And otherwise, it's not going to happen. And we have to do this quick enough. So that's, I think, I'm really happy that you brought this up. It's something that I'm really passionate about.
I want to add a few points on two questions similarly. Now, if you really take India and Sri Lanka is going through a similar issue. Now, we also have 27% of our workforce in agriculture. The contribution to GDP is 6%. And the service sector is demanding, and the second generation of agricultural families, those kids are moving to service sector. So we will have a multi-layered problem going forward, how to sustain agriculture. At the same time, to ensure that the income levels of people who are engaged in agriculture is equal or level enough with anybody working in the rest of the industry. So that is where I think there needs to be structural reforms in the policies, where that our traditional view of services could grow a country, that narrative that was planted to the developing world, saying that, the services can grow you better, that you don't have to focus on your agriculture. It can be imported. Self-sufficiency or food security is not so important. I think these rhetorics has to be changed now, because the governments, as nations, we need to understand where the food demand is going to come, and it's going to be 3 times more than what we need as we speak today. And the technology-driven agricultural transformation, including cooperative societies and creating larger farm organizations, is the only way to go forward. With those, we could convert farmers from landowners to the farm workers to landowners and ensure that they have a sufficient income both coming from labor and resource utilization. I think there needs to be a shift in how we looked at agriculture. And through that also, I think on the question of whether the salaries are enough, is there a minimum wage or a living wage? I think the competition will drive it. More we develop the productivity of the industries, the industries will keep demanding for the labor. Currently what has happened is, given there is lack of opportunities, the payments for labor stays low based on the demand and supply equation. Same garment produced in Sri Lanka, same garment produced in China, we get $250 plus, and where the same worker will get $400 plus in China. So the technology has made that productivity transformation. So that productivity transformation is what's going to drive salaries up. I think it's a big discussion, but just sharing few thoughts.
Plus global competition also, right? Like, so say for example, a nurse in India is getting 1/15 of the salary than in Germany. For sure, what's going to happen soon enough is that hospitals in India will also start realizing you have to pay them better. You can't pay them like this, and they will obviously get better opportunities.
Right.
I think there's normalization going to happen.
So we have one more question from the crowd. Why don't we go ahead and take this question?
Thank you very much, panel, for a very energizing session. I'd like to make this specifically to the Honorable Chaturanga. About the 31% of women's participation, labor participation. And normally we feel that, it is a problem of women trying to juggle their domestic and their professional needs. And that may be one, perhaps that may be one reason. But do you think of anything which could be big and bold moves to support systems which will enable them to increase their labor participation, their contribution, and of course also their livelihoods? Thank you.
I think the big, bold thought that we need to bring is the level of contribution of unpaid care work in Sri Lanka. Now, in these countries, the amount of economic effort the females do at home is sizable as our economy. Now, if you really imagine the amount of service a mother do at home, if you put a dollar value or a rupee value, our GDP will double. The reality is they are taking that entire burden unpaid. So now we need to realize, how do we make structural changes for childcare, structural changes for elder care, and also probably a mind shift that how a family would run. I think the bold move a government would do at this point is to enabling childcare and elderly care that will ensure that the workforce, the females who are not able to participate has more time and mind time to get involved in economic work. I think that's the change we need very immediately, but there is a social aspect as well. It will take some time. So the immediate impact that's going to come is through childcare and elderly care facilities across the country.
Thank you. I'm afraid we have to wrap up now. Thank you, everyone. I think today proved that we have job creation opportunities and that these opportunities are real. And it's on us to be big in our ambition. It's on us to be bold in the moves that we make, such as some of the policy conversations we're having here. And we have to be brave in terms of measuring those results and making progress moving forward. So let's build on what we want to be remembered for. Let's be big, bold, and brave. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please give them a round of applause. Shilpa, may I ask you to come and give these gifts, please? This is really, really interesting because the micro, skilling and that part of job creation opportunities is, quite opening. It's almost lunchtime, so let me introduce Safra for some announcements on the lunch.
Hello everyone. At lunch, we will have Saju with AI Lunch Lab. So if you're interested in AI and our lunch together, this is a really good session. I have a few logistic updates. It will be at Celestine, just like yesterday. So you know the room right there on the other side. That's where the hall will be.